Welcome to the Mick, a Mook, and a Mike. Hosted by four-time Emmy-nominated producer Frank Mace and retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor.
Today's guest, actor and magician, Stephen Valentine.
My brother
Frankie, how you doing today?
Good. Look at that picture. The younger version of ourselves.
We'll be doctoring that up pretty soon. Derek, can you take some of the lines out of there, make my nose a little smaller?
Can you put some gray hair in there? What'd you do for Labor Day?
I went sailing.
You what?
I went sailing.
Sailing, like
Sailing.
in your boat?
Yes. I took the 30-footer out to, where the hell did we go?
Catalina.
No, we didn't get that far.
Oh.
Santa Clara? That sound familiar? Somewhere
Santa
around
Clarita?
there? No, we were. It was
Santa,
an island. Anyway.
Santa Clara's up north.
We went somewhere. It was an island.
Derek,
No man is an island.
Derek, how'd you like to be on that boat? Where are you going? I don't know.
It's like sailing with Columbus.
How'd you get back?
I don't know. Where you going? I don't know. When I got there, I saw a lot of Indians. I don't know. I thought I was going to India. Only you Italians can celebrate that kind of thing. A guy gets lost, don't know where he ends up, and now he's a hero.
He stumbles upon a foreign land,
Screws it all up,
and he discovers the Indians.
Tries to go east, ends up going west. He don't know.
And
so yeah, I went sailing. My wife, oddly enough, was nervous.
Really?
I don't know why.
You bastard! You almost got me on a spit take.
I can circumnavigate the globe. I'm smart. Not like everybody says.
Oh shit!
Oh, wow.
Yeah, once she lost sight of the land, she started getting a little nervous. She started going, "You sure you know?" What's gonna happen? What can happen?
Did you see any sharks?
I did see a shark fin.
Well,
he didn't come out in the water. He wasn't a land shark. He didn't knock on the door and say, "Land shark."
He wasn't the kind that Armin wrote about in the Billy Walters book.
No, he wasn't that kind of shark. I've seen enough of those sharks.
Yeah.
No, he was. I saw a fin. Yeah.
And it wasn't a 5. There wasn't a 5 attached to it.
No, that kind of fin. A Mickey fin. It was a real fin. But I saw a lot of porpoise. 50, 60 porpoise at one time, and another bunch come under the boat. They play with you. They do. They come under the boat. They dive. They play.
Very interesting.
Try to play a number with them. Hey, 342 Brooklyn.
Listen to Derek. It's very interesting.
Yeah, so it was fun. It was all right. We just went out there, camped, dropped an anchor. And,
wait a second. Okay.
No, you go.
You
go
say
ahead.
it.
No,
You
no,
say
go
it.
ahead. Go ahead.
You camped.
on the boat.
Oh, okay. So how is that different than what
It ain't.
what you normally do on the boat?
The only difference is you don't have a line for electricity. When you're in the dock, you can plug into your electricity.
You have a generator?
No.
Oh.
That requires knowing how to know what to do.
Solar panels?
We have solar panels.
Okay. Batteries?
We have batteries.
What type of batteries do you have?
The batteries.
And you wonder why your wife was
She was
nervous.
getting a little nervous. You sure you know what you're doing? No. I got 1 foot in the grave anyway. With a banana, what do I give a shit? She's a couple 20 years younger than me.
You don't know where you went, and you don't know how you got back.
I got back the same way I went. Turned around, I went back the other way.
Well, what were the reference points?
Oh, no. We had the coordinates, and I put it into the GPS and the
Okay.
whole deal.
Wow.
I knew where I was going then, but that was days ago. I forget. I forget where I've been. But I had a good time. It was nice.
I'm really concerned.
You should come out. We'll take a ride. Take a sail.
Not a chance. First of all, I wouldn't come out if you knew where you were going. This just caps it off. But Derek will go with you. Derek and Yesenia.
Yeah, I don't. I was gonna go, but now after.
Oh, come on now.
There is no way.
The island, you head out there, Anaconda, whatever. You just go out there. What's the name of that island? Anaconda. Who knows?
I don't know. You're asking me, and you're telling a story.
How long were you out? How long did it take you to
Just,
get to
it took
your
5.5 hours to sail there.
your unknown destination?
I think I discovered the Americas. Let's call this place America.
Why did they call it America?
Oh,
I mean, if
wasn't
America's Vespucci,
Yeah.
but if Columbus discovered the Americas, why did they call it
after
Columbus?
him? I don't know. Why did they call it Columbus? I don't know.
call it America because America's Vespucci discovered this
But
place
you know,
that
I've
Columbus discovered, the place that the Indians discovered many years before.
I love that. Only Europeans could land on a continent that's completely inhabited by people and say, "We discovered this place. Now let's go about killing all these people and get them the hell off our land."
Tragic.
It's pretty remarkable. Really.
It's pretty fucking tragic.
Yeah, it really is. And you know what? If you read The People's History of the United States, Howard Zinn, I think, wrote it. Great book. But he tells you about what happened when they pulled up in San Salvador. Like Columbus was saying, like, these people are so naive. They have no weapons. They're coming with gifts. And what they did was they rode them around the island because they couldn't find gold. They take off their arm, take off their leg, if they didn't come back with gold. I mean, really vicious shit. Europeans were like,
Was that-
1492.
Well, I mean,
Was that before or after we imported the slaves from Africa?
We're talking about 15th century Europeans. You know, these are not really
So you're saying they're not the same as you?
not civilized. I mean, I'm civilized. I eat with a knife and fork and everything. I'm civilized.
You may not know when to use the knife or when to use the fork. You know, you use the fork for soup, but
Yeah, that's true. I try to eat fork with a spoon. Soup. I eat soup with a fork. Fork with a soup. But yeah, I mean, they were really vicious. I mean, even if you read about Jamestown, but if somebody stole in Jamestown, they'd take their tongue and nail it to a block of wood. So they stole food, so they couldn't eat for
I had a friend who will remain nameless, but he was a mercenary in Vietnam, and if you know who he is, don't say it.
Okay.
But
I won't remember his name anyway.
yeah, well, he captured some guy, a Vietnamese, and he was trying to get some sleep, and the guy kept yelling. He kept yelling, so he took his hand and he drove a stake through his hand, and he nailed him to the stump of the tree, and then he ultimately quieted down. But wow, can you imagine? I mean, this guy also carried a severed head around in his knapsack for days. So you were lucky to be in that air conditioned hut in Laos or wherever the hell you were.
Without a doubt. I mean, I've read also, they talk about the atrocities, and war is an atrocity. I mean, everybody does things to us, we do things to them, the atrocities of it. So nobody's as vicious as an 18-year-old kid that's trained by Marine Corps and sent out to do what they got to do.
You bet. You bet.
And they never get over it.
Especially a Southerner. Yeah. I mean, we were fighting the war. We were fighting the war with fucking 17, 18, 19-year-old fighter pilots.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the deal. They're kids. You go into the service at 18. It's 18 to 22. I mean, one of the things that's remarkable, you go up to West Point and go walking around, you see how young these kids are. I mean, they look like babies. And when you're 18 and you're going in, you think you're a man. You ain't no man. You're a kid. You're still following orders. Just following orders.
You can fight a war, but you can't drink a beer.
Yeah.
At 18.
I can't vote either.
Can't vote either.
Can you vote now at 18 or is it 21 still?
I think it's 18, and if the Democrats have their choice, they'll
Make
reduce
it
it to 16. Reduce it to 16.
Yeah.
Well, on to a brighter subject. Why don't we get our guest on? Steve Valentine's a great comedian, magician.
So he's brighter than we are.
He's much, by the way, he's much brighter than we are. I worked with him for 2 years on Nikki. He played Martine. He's a great guy. So, Derek, if you can bring him on. There he is. How you doing, Steve?
Hello.
It's
Nice to see you.
It has been a bit, hasn't it?
Well, there's a lot's happened since I've seen you. My gosh, there was marriage, kids, divorce, and pandemic. So it's been a bit. It's been a bit.
That's Billy O'Connor.
How are you, Steve? Nice to know you, pal.
And that's
Pleasure.
Hello, Billy. Good to meet you.
That's the third guy in the booth, Derek Harris.
Hello.
It's Derek with a C, not Derek with a K, because Derek with a K is Derek, right?
That's right. That's right.
Magician or comic? What's the story with this guy? I like this.
Hey, whatever pays the bills,
I
Billy.
like his style. I like his style.
Exactly. So you're Scottish, I see.
Yeah, I was born there. My parents happened to be living there at the time, but so I'm first gen. So it's interesting. I did a whole bunch of press for the Scots when we were doing I'm in the Band and with you, and I just they kept asking me what my clan was, about my heritage, and I just didn't have the I didn't have the heart to tell them what my parents were just passing through at the time. So,
what, were you an army brat or something? Why were they pissed?
my dad was working in the dockyards, and he was going to night school to, he was going to end up working at Lloyd's in London. But in order to do certain things, we had to slowly making our way down the country, essentially, is what we were doing.
So you were born in Scotland, but you grew up in England. What's the derivation of that accent?
Oh, this accent is just a bastardization of everywhere I've been since, because I lived in Southend, but I never had that Southend, not mean kind of accent, just because I was doing a lot of theatre. So and I was doing stand-up magic, so I always needed to be a little more, a little more precise, so I could be understood. So then, with the acting training and everything, my voice. But then when I started traveling the world and doing gigs abroad and then cruise ships and then moving to the States, the accent became just an amalgamation of crap. And now that I'm in Canada for a little bit, every now and again I hear that little Canadian, that happens at the end of every Canadian. No matter what they say, it sounds like a question because I was going down the road, and it becomes, so it's part of the passive aggressiveness of the country, I think, is the way that accent works.
They do the same thing in the north of Ireland. They do. It seems like everything they say is they go up, like it's in Boston. I'm going down there. Are you? Are you going?
Yeah,
down there?
yeah. And the U.S., like a standard American, is more like everything's a statement, whether it's a question or not. Like you're going to the park, right? And by the way, Billy, did you know that there was a magician in the 1920s called Billy O'Connor?
No, but I guarantee he was no relation. And I bet you, I don't know anything about it, but I bet you he never earned a buck. I bet you he died broke.
Let me tell you, Billy O'Connor was very successful.
Oh.
He did a 12-minute act his entire life, just a deck of cards on stage. And he's someone I've been studying because I've been trying to figure out what he did, because the idea of going on stage in front of 2,000, 3,000 people with just a deck of cards and entertaining everybody for that period of time. So he was known as Billy O'Connor and the 52 Assistants. And then later on, Ricky Jay took that title and gave it to his show. But Billy O'Connor was pretty great. Like I put together almost his entire show.
Was he an Irishman? I mean, was he born in Ireland?
Yeah, he was. I don't know if he was born in Ireland, but he was Irish and he spoke French. The part of his family was French, so he was able to work in Europe. And then he came to America for a while. So I'm just saying, he was in America for a while because he traveled a lot. So
definitely takes a lot of balls to go on stage with 52 cards. I mean, considering you're talking about an audience, 2,000 or 3,000 people, the people in the back can't even see the bloody cards,
Can't even see. Yeah. So that's what fascinated me, right? Was like, how did he make it sell? And so what he used to do was he would be on stage, but he'd have 4 people up on stage with him from the audience sitting at a table, and their reactions, it was what sold, when they're like, oh man, very wow. David Blaine before David Blaine. And that's what sold the show. So it was a certain kind of technique, but he did it. He was really, really good. Yeah.
I never heard of the guy. I got to check him out. Imagine somebody famous named Billy O'Connor. Who could figure?
As a matter of fact, I thought I was calling Billy O'Connor when I called you for the book. I got the wrong Billy O'Connor.
You got the wrong Billy O'Connor since the day you met me, pal. That's cool, because so your accent is a bastardized British accent. It's not really Cary Grant type poor, but yet it's not the
it's not English, it's not super what we call RP, right? It's not super like high end toffee nose like Shakespeare.
I say
all the way up there.
Situation. What? Like this lyric situation. What? It's not that kind of shit. It's more down in the street.
By the way, Steve, there are times that nobody understands Billy as like just
now.
He goes off. He goes off.
I speak 7 languages. The trouble is, it's all at once.
He goes off on a rant sometimes, and we just say okay, and we just move on.
Right. I get it. Yeah, I know people like that. Okay. So great. I'll go make some coffee. You let me know when. Give me the note.
No, that won't happen, brother. You're going to be I can't wait to talk to you more about. You started as a magician. Did you do some kind of stand-up while you were doing the magic act? Was it funny or was it just pure magic?
Yeah. Well, I always did everything. I when I was a kid, my mate at school, like 7 or 8 years old, told me about this dancing school that he was a part of, and he said he was the only boy there. So I was like, I'm in. And so whatever it takes to get you into showbiz. And then I would do. So I trained as a dancer, and then I would do theatre shows as well as an actor. When I was a kid, I joined a theatre group, and then the magic was just something else that I just loved doing round about all at the same time. It's just all performance to me. But when I was on stage, I used to, at first I would do just magic to music. That was it. And then I remember doing this Masonic Lodge show, and as you do, and I was doing it with this old music hall performer. So this would have been 83, 84, and he was in his 80s at that point. So he'd been a star. His name was Ben Warris. He was part of a group called Warris and Jewel that used to do old time musical. And he kept saying to me, "Kid, you got to learn to talk." You know, and I was like, "I can talk. What are you talking about?" He goes, No, you got to learn to talk when you're on stage. He said, "How many tricks are you doing in 12 minutes? And I'd be like, I don't know, 25 tricks in 12 minutes because it's like, you know. And he'd say, "If you talk, you only need to do 2. You know? He said, "If you learn how to speak to an audience, work with an audience," which is very much the British style, right? You know, we're working off a crowd all the time. Heckling is an art form. It's accepted. It's not like in America. I remember the first time I came to America when I was like 20 years old, and somebody was heckling me, and I just came right back with all the lines to like shut them up, which in England would be great because then people would sometimes, like, if you ever watch Jimmy Carr, right?
He's great.
Yeah, so that's the style. I remember like coming back on this woman with some line, and then the audience just went ooh when they turned against me. And I thought, wow, got to be very careful how you do it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Jimmy Carr is, of course, he's unbelievable. I mean, everybody in the audience says anything, he destroys them. I mean, destroys them. He's brutal.
It's a game. See, in the English, it's a game. It's just part of passage. It's the rite of passage when you're on stage. So I did all those working men's clubs that we have, which are, you know, places like, for example, like Ford or the coal miners or whatever. They all have these clubs that they go to at night, which are paid for by the management. And basically it's free beer and free entertainment, or at least cheap beer and entertainment. And so you have this really weird dichotomy of an audience that is a blue collar, tough, hard, foul-mouthed, loud, drunk, but aficionados of variety because they see like 10 acts a week. So you couldn't go on and do somebody else's show because they'd know it, right? And they were not brutal, but they were hard. I mean, you really, from the second you walked on that stage, you had to attack because if they sensed weakness, they would destroy you. And so that was me growing up. That I would do that when I was a teenager. I remember going to this one working men's club in, I think it was Brixton or something, and I pull over and I asked this guy like if he could give me directions. And he's to the Brixton Working Men's Club, and he goes, "Why would you want to go there?"
Ford was in Dagenham, is that right? Is that right?
Yeah, Dagenham's like the big Ford plant. That's right. Okay. I did Dagenham. Actually, my introduction there was I arrived and I was like, "Hi, I'm the magician," and the guy who was organizing it goes, "Oh, we ordered a hypnotist." And they said, "No, I don't do hypnosis. I do magic." And he goes, "Well, we wanted a hypnotist." And I said, "Well," he goes, "All right." So he goes on to introduce me, and he says, "How many of you are ready for the hypnotist?" And everyone cheers. And then he goes, "Well, we've got a magician for you." And that was my introduction.
Yeah. So how'd you segue into acting?
Well, I always did it with the theatre, and so I was part of a theatre group called the Proscenium Company, and it was interesting. It was run by this guy Alexander Bridge, who was a brilliant coach and director and a bit of a rascal too. And he had some kind of, it was theatre and education, and he got some kind of money from the government. I don't know quite how he ran it, but we were able to do 4 different shows a year. So we would do an old time musical variety show. We would do an original musical. We would do a Christmas pantomime. And that was really my education in acting at that point. And it was great because I'd always be given the role I never wanted. And I think it was Pacino who said that, like, those are Michael Caine. Those are the roles that you want. The ones that you think you're right for, that's not what you need. What you need is the role that you think you're not right for, or that you don't want, so that you learn how to make it work. So in a repertory company, you always got those roles, because one show you're playing the lead, and the next show you're just some guy holding a spear.
Right.
And that was great. So then, but I never did TV or film in the UK. It wasn't till I had a friend of mine say to me, hey, you might want to, we were talking about America, and she was saying, like, well, I've got a boyfriend, I've got stuff keeping me here. She said to me, Steve, you've got nothing going on in your life. You should go to America and give it a shot. Just go and knock on the doors and show them how it's done. That's what we used to say. So one year I did that. We jumped on a plane, came over in '89 on a holiday visa, and then we all figured out how to stay. But that was kind of the naivety of youth, where you don't really think too much about it. I sold all my magic props in England. I went to my local magic club, which was called the South End Sorcerers Society, which is all these amateur magicians, all these cranky old bastards who were wonderful. They'd taken me under their wing. And I was like, listen, I need to buy a plane ticket. You guys want to buy any of my props in order to fund it? And they did. I guess it was early crowdfunding in a way. And they were amazing because they bought almost everything, even though they already had it, or the trick sucked, or, they still essentially financed my trip to the States, which I'll always be grateful for. Wow.
It's pretty remarkable, right? Talking about repertoire acting and saying 1 minute you're playing the lead, next minute you're holding a spear.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to really hone your chops in a situation like that. I mean, the longer you're there, the better it is for you for growth, I would imagine, as an actor.
Exactly, because you're always learning something, and I'm a huge fan of Michael Caine and his biographies, and I've listened to all of them. And he talks about that. It's like you might be on stage doing nothing, but you're never doing nothing. And that focus, that will teach you, like, incredible focus. Yeah, and that's been my career, entire career, even in TV and film. Is sometimes I'll be like, doing the lead, and the next minute I'm, can I get you a coffee, sir?
Well, you came over on a student visa in '89. When did you start succeeding? Of course, you're always thriving, or you're always trying to succeed. But when did you start succeeding in getting parts?
It took about 3 years and this is what I always say when I meet people in LA, and they're like, I'm going to give it a year. And I'm like, you can't do anything in a year. I remember I started working at the Magic Castle in Hollywood. And so the idea was that the Magic would finance the acting journey, right? So, which for a while was great. So I would work at the Magic Castle, and then I became like the Beverly Hills party circuit guy. So I ended up doing kind of all these huge mansion parties for, who was that? Marvin Davis, and, like Lawrence Kasdan, and all these kind of, I remember I met Janet Leigh one party, and it was, and Dom DeLuise, and all these, and they all had these parties, and I would go and be the entertainment, which was amazing, but frustrating because I was
so near, but yet so far, right?
So far. And I had a moment, and it's funny because I quit magic for 10 years because of a number of things that happened. And I wrote, when I came back into doing it as a hobby, and now kind of as a side hustle, which I love doing because it's on my own terms. But when I would go to parties, or I would say, I remember saying to Lawrence Kasdan one day, I was doing his holiday parties all the time, and then I was like, by the way, I'm also an actor, and then you see the eyes glaze over, you know what I mean? It's like, you hear that. And I realized that magician actor is the same as, a model actress, juggler, magician. Are you going to take that person seriously? Back then, I don't think so. Now, I think you're expected to have a million talents. But certainly then I found it was, they'd be like, well, you did my kid's bar mitzvah. I'd go to an audition and somebody would be there who knew me, or saw me at the castle. And so you can't break that mold. So so I had this dinner, and so I wrote this one-man show about this whole experience, and that's why I got how I got back into the magic thing. But I remember I met Ray Stark, right?
Right.
Ray Stark,
Yeah.
big producer, met him at the Magic Castle. He sees my show and he's like, I want to talk to you about a movie, kid. Because I always said in my introduction, hey, I'm an actor. He's an actor and he's a magician. And so I thought, oh, this is great. Finally, I get an opportunity, and I go to Ray Stark's mansion, and he had this house that used to be owned by, they'll come to me in a minute, but it was a big movie star's house that he bought, and he always had a cop car in the front. He bought a cop car and he parked it there. So that was his security. And so I remember going there, and there was a whole bunch of unusual kind of Hollywood types there, and it was a really weird dinner. And then we all had to go and watch a first run movie, because that's how they did it in those days, right? The studio would send over a reel, all right, and then it was like, what did the studio send over today? Oh, it's American Pie. So then we had to watch American Pie, and he didn't get the pie scene, which I thought was really interesting. I wasn't going to explain it to him. And then and then everyone kind of left, and it was just my ex-wife, myself, and Ray, and now we started talking about the movie, and he handed me a script, and he was gonna remake Houdini, the movie Houdini, and he had this lovely script, and I know he was talking to Tom Cruise. I don't remember if he locked in Tom for that at that point, but Tom loves magic. Like, Tom's a member of the castle. He does magic in almost everything he does. There's a trick in there somewhere. So he actually would be an amazing Houdini. He's the right build. He's the right kind of charisma for the role. And so I said, that's great. What part can I play? And then Ray was like, what? No. He's like, just help me put the magic in the movie, And I said, well, I'll do that for free if you can give me just like a little part to break in. I need to break it, And he was like, what are you, a magician or an actor? You got to make a choice. You can't be both. And it really made an impact on me that night. So I said no thank you to the consultancy, magic consultants, and I kind of shortly after that quit, put all my magic away, sold a lot of it, and then started working, and then shortly after that I got a sitcom with Bruce Helford called Nikki, and then Crossing Jordan, and just kind of, in fact, when we were doing I'm in the Band for Disney, the character, Derek Jupiter, they started writing that he was a hobbyist, kind of in a similar way, where he didn't like to talk about it because he was a rock star, but he loved magic, and it kind of made its way into the script, which was a lot of fun.
You talk about Nikki. Nikki's a show that Steve and I did together. He played a choreographer in Vegas.
Yeah.
And it's why don't you tell us a little about that part?
So that was I played a role called Martine, and he was a very over the top, very camp gay choreographer. I don't think you could play that part now, for sure. You can, but the show was really clever. So basically, Nikki Cox plays a dancer, and her, as in a showgirl dancer, and then her boyfriend that she lives with is a wrestler, and he's kind of like stocky, a little bit overweight. And I remember, that was kind of the dream of that was the dream of the guy, right? Like the kind of slightly overweight, stocky guy gets the hot girl. And so it was a really funny kind of dynamic between the two of them. And then you had all these various variety acts. Susan Egan was part of that show. And there was a guy from Italy called Arturo Bracchetti, and Arturo was had an amazing show himself. He was a quick change costume artist and magician, who I already knew his work, so that was kind of great that he was on it. And then I was like this kind of very, very over the top camp choreographer, and I really, really liked it. But my memory of that show was twofold. One is it was the first thing when I was a recurring guest star. And it was my first experience of something that sometimes networks do, where they're like, we love you, but we're not going to make you a series regular, but you're going to be in every episode. And it's kind of this fine kind of, you're not big enough like in the storylines to be a series regular, but we love having you there. So that was a really interesting thing to kind of handle. But I loved it because it was my first kind of multiple episode show. And I remember the guy who played the boyfriend, the second lead, Nikki's boyfriend in the show. I think that was the first show.
Nick Van Esmark?
Yeah, Nick. And that was the first thing he'd ever auditioned for.
Yep.
And so I remember that his attitude towards showbiz was, it ain't hard. What? You just go out, you audition, you get the show. You just want to smack him and go, dude, it's just such a rare thing that the first thing you audition for, you get the part. Didn't he lose a ton of weight for season 2 or something?
Yeah, I think he was sweet on Nikki.
Yeah, I think so. And he
wanted to try to impress her by being not so slovenly, which totally worked against
dieted himself out of the part.
He dieted himself out of the part. And
which is unusual in Hollywood, right? It's usually the other way around.
Yeah.
But I mean, at that time, Nikki was dating Bobcat, so I don't think
Bobcat Thwait?
Goldthwait.
Goldthwait.
Yeah. She later married Jay Moore, and then they got divorced, and Jay Moore is now getting married to Jeannie Buss.
It's very incestuous, Hollywood, isn't it?
It is incestuous. You're happy you're in Toronto. So
no, but that's another story.
Yeah. So you went on to do 117 episodes of
Crossing Jordon.
Crossing Jordon. What was that like?
And it was amazing. So the reason I got that show was because I was doing Nikki. So I was doing Nikki, and then one of the other actors, recurring guest star actors, came in one day and he said, I just auditioned for this part on a series. He said, I did a horrible British accent. He said, but you'd be great for it. You should tell your agent about it. So I called my agent at the time. He wasn't a particularly strong agent, and he hadn't even heard of the series. It was the untitled Tim Crean series at the time. Anyway, so he gets me the audition. And I remember going in and getting a call back. And then I went and met with Tim and Alan Arkush, right? And Alan's been around forever, and Alan was the series director. And it was one of the worst auditions I felt I ever had, because they kept asking me to redo it and do it a different way and bring it down and tone it down, because I'd just been doing sitcoms. So when I went in, I was like, yeah, and he's like, no, this is a drama. And that was kind of my nickname throughout the entire series. I remember every now and then, Alan would just, when I got this, he would just lean out from behind the camera and go, yo, Steve. Or if I took too long, he'd be like, Steve, the show, if I was milking a scene, he'd be like, it's 42 minutes. The show is 42 minutes. But I remember having that audition and being so depressed afterwards, because I just thought I'd completely blown it. And then I got the call saying, come do the pilot, which ended up just being 2 scenes as the criminologist in the office. And then they called me back when the show got picked up, and they offered me half the money they paid me in the pilot. And I remember thinking at the time, and it's funny when you look back and you go, oh, thank God, at the time I had 5 national commercials running. And so financially I was okay. And I remember thinking, I don't want to do a network series for scale. And even if it was recurring at that point, it wasn't a series regular. So I turned it down, which now looking back, I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? I said, no, I'm good. I'm not going to do it for less money than, you got to pay me at least what you paid me in the first episode. And eventually they did. And I went back, and then within 5 episodes of doing that show, they offered me the series regular. And that was just a great moment. I remember getting that phone call. And I was just about to say, it's funny, Frank, I was just about to say to my agent, I was like, listen, I've done 5 episodes. I don't want this to be like Nikki, where I'm going to do 22 episodes, but then, I'm not going to get like a series regular bump. So we were kind of about ready to go in and say something. And then they came out and said that we want to make Steve a regular. And that was pretty amazing. And I always say, like, there's this trajectory that you have when you get your first series, big series, and I speak to actors all the time, friends of mine in LA or friends of friends who have they've got their series, they've got a series and they don't know what to expect, and I'm like, okay, here's the trajectory of it, right? So your first season, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm on television. I would do this shit for free, but I'm not going to tell anyone, right? This is amazing. And this is a stepping stone. No matter what happens, this is a stepping stone to the next thing, right? And then season 2, you're like, well, this is great. I'm going to wait till season 3 to renegotiate, but I hope the writing's better. But I'm going to get a new car, right? So now season 2, everyone gets a better car. It's kind of,
absolutely
right.
I wrote about that in our book. First year, everybody shows up and used Kias, and the year after that, everybody's got the BMWs and Mercedes and Lexuses, and so
yeah, and it's you can tell what season a show is in by the car that's in the parking spot. and then season 3, you're like, hey, I'm you need me on this show. More money, I need more money. Renegotiate. Season 4 is if you don't write better for my character, I'm going to fucking quit. Right. And season 5 is I want to go do movies. I don't want to be here. I want to do movies. So I would say to people, don't follow that trajectory. It's very common. I've seen it a million times. You can tell that I talk to actors all the time. They're like, yeah, I'm like season 3 of a series, but I don't want to be doing this. I'm like, listen, it's 4 years out of your life. It's going to be over before you know it. Be a team player, because in the end, your reputation is what will get you the next job, and that's what I think a lot of people don't realize is I've been in auditions where I remember seeing this one guy who was really well known, and I was like, how come we're both auditioning for the same thing? And he's like, I'm in actor jail right now. I just quit a series. He said, I have a bad rep. He said I was a bit of a naughty boy, so I need to work back my trust back.
And then as soon as he worked back his trust, he'd probably repeat the same
same behavior.
Yeah. So you did 117 episodes. What was that, 5 years? 5, 6?
Yeah, 5, 6 years. We did. They kept trying to cancel us by moving us around the schedule, but every time they moved us, the audience increased. I remember we would get 20 million. I mean, gosh, 20 million viewers now, right? We would get about 20 million. We'd be in the top 10, top 15. The first 4 seasons, I was all about give me the writing, give me the scenes, give me the dialogue. And Miguel Ferrer, who I love to this day, God bless him, Miguel was all about minimal dialogue and just getting in and doing a great job, but then not stressing about it. And so anytime sometimes he would say, Steve, you want to say this? I'd be like, yes, give this dialogue to me. I'll take it. And so I ended up being the guy with all the technical jargon, which was the sword that I fell on. But it was a really great. And then I was fighting, and I had a manager who was kind of at the time who was very toxic, who was pushing for me to quit at one point. But then when I got rid of him, and then the final 2 seasons, I ended up getting divorced. And the final 2 seasons of that show, I really settled into, I don't care if I have one right. scene, I'm going to get paid the same.
Right.
And I think if I'm in the band, there was a couple of times when Michael would say to me, like, we've only got you in like a little bit in this episode. And I'd be like, it's okay. It's all right. I get paid the same. I come in, I do my job, I go home. But on Jordon, I remember there were some episodes, I think I came in briefly for like a quick pop, a gag, a line, and then I was off for like 8 days. So then I would be like, all right, motherfuckers, I'm going to Mexico. I'll see you in a week.
Yeah.
and that was, that's the lessons. It's such a bizarre thing to get a television series. There's all this stuff that is happening at you, and to keep your ego in check, and to keep your, just to be realistic and focus on doing a good job and think about the bigger picture. It's not easy, because if you're on that call sheet and everyone's like, can I get you coffee? How are you? Are you okay? And the ADs are making sure you've got everything you need. It's not great if you have any kind of tendency to be a little bit egotistical. Yeah. So you really have to watch that, I think.
How did you like working with Jill Hennessy?
Jill's great. Yeah, Jill's great. She and I got on like a house on fire, and very early on, and I think one of the reasons that they kind of made me a series regular was on the first or second episode. I remember talking to the writers a lot and not giving them ideas for my character, but just saying things. My whole thing was like, oh yeah, Nigel could be from, and kind of like laying out storyline ideas in a very subtle manner. But Jill and I had a great chemistry, and so I started playing as if my character had a massive crush on her, even though it wasn't in the script.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of became like a major connection for our characters eventually. And I think that's one of the, they saw this kind of like, my character would do anything for her. He'd break the rules. He would, he would go that far. And Jill went with it as well. She played that as well. And we talked about it. So she was lovely. Jill was great. Miguel was, he was like the consummate pro. I learned so much from him. And when my manager at the time was pushing me to like, they pay you more, you quit. I'm like, are you nuts? You want me to quit like a network show? No one will ever hire me again. And Miguel came in and he said, Steve, he's like, you got to ride this thing into the sunset, man.
Get rid of that manager.
Smart. Now this is Miguel Ferrer. This is Jose Ferrer's son.
And I might add, he's George Clooney's cousin.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and Miguel would tell me all these amazing stories that I can't repeat when they were teenagers and when they would go out on the town in LA, And I went on the town a couple of times with Miguel, and it was a lot of fun.
Was Rosemary Clooney his mother?
I think yes,
so.
Yes. Rosemary's his mom. Jose was his dad, and with George Clooney, it was Rosemary's brother, who was
the newscaster.
His dad, yeah,
newscaster in LA.
Wow, terrific actor.
What was his name? I forget his name, but yeah. But
so you learned a lot from him, Miguel. I got a question for you.
Wait.
Miguel. All right. Miguel.
Okay.
Pedro.
Continue.
Miguel. All right. Hey, I got a question for you. I noticed all the unbelievable amount of guest spots you did on television.
Yeah.
When you get a show like Nikki or you get a show like Crossing Jordan, does that become like the dream gig? That was the dream gig, and why? Is it because of the people you work with? Is it the amount of episodes you do, the amount of money, the security? What's the best gig you ever had, and why? Is what I'm asking.
The dream, I mean, you're always looking for that thing that's going to kind of get you noticed. The idea of playing the same character over and over again, I love, because it grows with you, and you get to build it. Yes, the money is great, especially when we're all struggling in LA to make it. And so when you start getting a regular paycheck, that's a great thing. I just love the business so much that I love when it's a regular job. I would drive onto Universal, and the same when I was doing Nikki, I would drive onto the Warner Brothers lot, and just really kind of pinch myself as you drive up to the gate and they know you and they say hi and they let you in and you go to your parking spot. It's the history of Hollywood. I mean, you're surrounded by it, and now you're suddenly part of it. And for me, I love that. I love that vibe. It's ever since I was a kid, I dreamt about doing it. So I would smile big every single day I drove onto that lot.
That's all you can do. Love your job, right? When you love your job like that, and obviously, since you were a kid, you wanted to be on stage with the magic and everything, and you just had the thirst for it. You wanted it.
I just kind of always knew I'd be in LA at some point. It was always a quiet kind of, it's a weird thing, like a quiet confidence. I remember I would do these when I first got to LA. I would do these acting classes, and I really hated the. I don't like them. They're the casting director workshops, where you basically pay money to do a scene in front of a casting director, but it's kind of a necessary evil in the business because you're. How else are you going to get seen, right? You got to do something in order to get spotted, and I remember this guy who was part of the group, this actor, and I remember him saying to me after a class one day, he said, can I ask you a question? He's like, do you really think you're going to be successful? and I was like, well, I think something will happen. There'll be a role at some point, sure. And he goes, well, he said, it's just that, he said, look at me. He said, I'm short, I'm fat, I'm Jewish. He's like, I can play doctors, I can play lawyers. There's always roles that I can slot into. He said, you're tall. I was really skinny at the time, had super long hair, very goofy looking, big forehead. And he goes, you've got this very distinctive look. What can you play? And I remember thinking, well, first of all, I was like, fuck you. But then but what I actually said to him was, look, I said, I'll probably end up just being my own type. Jack Nicholson was his own type. Jack Nicholson couldn't get work until he became Jack Nicholson. And I feel like the right role will surface. I'm not going to be doing all these like jobs like you, I said, but then your jobs are like, they come and go and nobody really pays any attention to them. I said, I want to do something bigger and better. I was very offended by that, but I kind of palmed it off. A year and a half later, I'm doing Crossing Jordon.
Uh-oh.
And he's a guest star on the show.
Oh, cool.
Playing a lawyer.
That's great.
Playing a doctor. So he was playing a doctor. And, what do you do at that point? Like, you can either...
he say, fuck you.
Sticking up his ass a little bit, hey, what do you think it is? Hey,
I didn't have to.
How's
I
this
didn't have
feel?
to.
Yeah,
You didn't have
yeah,
to.
it was done.
I didn't have to.
Yeah, it was
So
done.
basically, I was super, in the end, I'm just like, I showed him around. I met him. I made sure we walked past my parking space.
Nice.
But,
Yeah.
I wanted him to feel at home. It was a great set. Crossing Jordon was like, and even now we talk about it. Some of the crew and cast got together for a get together last weekend. It was one of the best. It was one of the loveliest crews and casts I think I've ever worked with. It was a super tight family. And Frank, when you're on a show for a while, that becomes a super tight family unit. You're going to have marriages, divorces, deaths, births. It's all part of that cocoon. You spend more time with these people than you do with your own family, and especially in a drama. Sitcom, way better hours. Love sitcom, but in a drama, so you are a family. If there's a toxic person in there, it's a problem. We were so lucky in Crossing Jordon that it was really a beautiful kind of mesh. We made every guest star super welcome, and feel like it was that we would all work together, and everyone was there for everyone's off-camera dialogue. There was none of that stuff, and I think it was the vibe of that, and I think even Tim Kring says it was one of the fun shows that he ever worked on, he ever created.
And you had a great cast also. My friend Ken Howard, rest in peace.
Love Ken.
He was
Ken.
the white.
Ken
the
did
white
this
shadow.
thing.
He owned a
The
bar.
White Shadow.
He owned a bar, and he was Jill Hennessy's father. Correct.
Yes, and then I remember, man, like Ken was tough, like because he'd been around for so long, and he did this thing, and I'm probably going to get it wrong, so exactly the details, but basically there was a moment I remember. So there was a moment during the series where we went from being a character-driven show to CSI came out shortly after us and was doing really well, and it was all about the technological stuff, right? So NBC was like, well, we'll do less character-driven stories, and we're going to focus on the labs and the detection side of it, and all of the DNA and all that crap. So it changed everything, and which meant Ken's character wasn't as needed. So they wanted to cut down his episodes, and he was like, "I'm a series regular. I'm a full year series regular. I'm not 13 out of 20. I'm not 8 out of 13. And they had a big battle about that, and Ken really stood his ground. And I think, I'm not sure if he quit or they ended up not renewing his contract, exactly how that went. But I remember he was very upset about it, very rightly so, because he'd worked hard with Jill to create this vibe, lovely kind of character thing. So they did an episode where they wanted him to come back. And I don't know the negotiations of it. I don't know whether they negotiated a specific contract for this one episode, or whether they said you have to because you're still under contract, or I don't know. But I remember when he came back, he wasn't happy about it. I do remember they gave him the contract on set.
Wow.
And he signed it in blood.
Wow.
In blood.
Cut his finger and went and signed it. And I thought that was amazing.
Wow. What a tell.
I mean, Ken, right? He was a passionate man, and
he was a passionate man.
And you didn't mess with Ken. So I've always thought I'll do that as a scene. I'll write that into a scene someday, because it was such a great moment.
And then after that, he became president of the Screen Actors Guild.
Yeah, I think that was maybe a vengeance thing. I don't know.
I got to ask
you want to fuck with me? I'm gonna run the union.
That's it.
And then you also had the opportunity to work with Catherine Hahn, her first Her first.
Gosh, that was Catherine was right out of school. She was right out of college, NYU, I think. And I think season two or three, they, she was getting all these offers, and she went off and started doing movies and stuff. And yeah, her career just soared. It was wonderful to see. Her character and I had like a great kind of banter as well. Catherine's so talented.
You mentioned before, and being a layman, I really don't get it, but I'm sure both of you, I got asked the question. You said sitcoms are a lot easier on time than drama. Why is that? Why is sitcoms less time than drama?
Yeah, well, I say so. A drama is usually it's 42 minutes or 45 minutes, depending on if it's network or whatever. And so it takes 8 days to film, and you're usually shooting 18 hours. 16 to 18 hour days. Often because there's only a couple of cameras and you got to do a lot of setups.
12 to 14 now. But when
right.
Steve was doing Crossing Jordan, they would probably go maybe 16 hours a day or something.
Yeah, we would chase the sun on a Friday night.
Yep.
You'd have what was called a Friday, which is basically you're getting paid for Friday, but you're secretly filming on Saturday.
Yep.
And so the hours are really long into the night. And with a sitcom, because they're continually doing rewrites, you come in, you do the table reading, and it's, and then you kind of put a thing on its feet, and then the next day you get the notes, and then you make the changes, and then you do it for producers, and it's a 22-minute episode, and so then there's more rewrites. So there's no point in staying and rehearsing into the night.
You usually go home 8 hours maximum if you're an actor.
Because the writers are trying to make it funnier all the time. They're editing more.
And you're limited in sets, so there's only so much you can do blocking wise.
Yeah.
So
which is great. And then you're as an actor, it's a little tricky because you're kind of learning, but you're not really learning it because it's going to change, but you got to familiarize yourself with it. So it becomes and then you've got the day before filming the big producers run through for final notes. You get the final script, and then you only film on one night in front of a live studio audience, which I loved. The live audience was really that part was just great for me. And then they changed the writing changes as you're filming. I remember, and I'm in the band. There was a scene where I had to say something in Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish, so I was given this paragraph, this monologue. Suddenly he speaks Spanish and only breaks, and apparently they wrote it wrong, the syntax of the Spanish. So in front of the audience, they go, hold on. So they end up going, we wrote it. Can you do this Spanish monologue right here? And I had a minute to look at it and just try and make it work. So you're on your feet, you're on your toes the whole time. It's visceral. It's wonderful. But the hours are way better. You can have a better, that's what everybody wants.
Yeah, you got to check with Miguel. That's the guy who'll tell you about the Spanish. He'll tell you what's going on.
That's great. You don't forget anything, do you?
I remember he was talking before about Michael Caine. I just read a terrific thing about Michael Caine. He was talking about working with John Wayne, and somebody handed John Wayne a script from Hamlet, and Wayne looked at it and said, "Could you read that? To be or not to be? That is the question. Who wrote this shit?" He said, and threw it at Michael Caine. He tells the story. I thought it was pretty funny. Anyway.
I love his, he has an audio book from The Elephant to Hollywood, which he narrated. And it's like he's telling you his life. And what I loved about it, I always recommend it to people in show business, is to actors especially, is that he talks about people he met along the way. Or opportunities that came his way that didn't pan out, that would somehow pan out in a different way 5, 10, 15, 20 years later. And you looked at his trajectory of his career, and there's all these moments of, a thread was sewn here, and this connection was made here, and you didn't get that part, but then you bumped into that guy at the party, and he says, we're actually working on something else you'd be right for. And that was his career. That's how he got Alfie. That's how, he talks about Lionel Bart in Oliver, when he wrote the musical Oliver. He wrote Bill Sykes basically for Michael Caine.
Wow.
And because at that point, Michael Caine, Terence Stamp, and Sean Connery were roommates, and all struggling actors, right? Terence became a movie star. Sean got Bond, and Michael was, I'm never going to make it. He was in his 30s, I think. and then when they made Oliver, they gave it to another actor, and he was devastated. And he talks about like a year and a half later. So then shortly after that, he got Zulu, mainly because the actor who had the part quit or got sick or something. And Michael bumps into Cy Enfield, the director, in a bar. Enfield goes, "Your audition was bad, but you know what? We need someone to play this part. If you want to come, we're going to leave on Monday," essentially. And Zulu was how he broke. And then about a year and a half later, he's driving past the theater in his Rolls Royce, having done Alfie.
Wow.
That actor is still playing that role in Oliver. And it's that part. I always remember listening to that, just because when you don't get a part, when you don't get what you want, sometimes it feels like an awful thing, but it might be good. It might actually end up being there was a better reason. There's something better coming. So that always what kept me kind of grounded in LA.
That's From the Elephant to Hollywood is the name of it?
Called The Elephant. It's called The Elephant to Hollywood because he grew up in the Elephant and Castle in London.
Very cool.
Why don't you tell us
great book.
The Bryce Dallas Howard story?
Bryce. So yeah, well, only that I'm not sure which one you're referring to.
You performed magic at her 7th birthday.
Yeah, that's right. So when I was trying to break into acting, and I was doing these magic gigs, I got called to do a Christmas party, and in Toluca Lake, and I remember walking in, and everyone in the room was a redhead, right? Because
her dad Ron Howard is a redhead.
Right. So the whole family is redheads, except Clint, and everyone looked kind of familiar. And I remember Rance Howard, and then of course Ron comes in, and I'm like, holy hell, this is this is Ron Howard. This is the whole family's here, Clint, everyone, and so it was a Christmas party, and they all had on their Christmas sweaters. It was very, very, very Christmassy and traditional and wonderful and warm and lovely. And I just knelt at the coffee table, and everyone sat around, and we just did close-up magic, and it was a lot of fun. And I remember saying to Rance, I used to have a line where I'm like, "Can you help me with something? It's not that big a part. Just stay where you are." And it got a massive laugh, because that's apparently what Ron would say to his dad was, "I'm doing a movie. I've got a part for your dad. It's not that big. It's not that big a part." And then that was their catchphrase. Years later, and I remember that party was very surreal, and it was lovely. And then years later, I was doing Spider-Man 3. I had a couple of scenes in Spider-Man 3, and she was there, and we talked about it. And then Ron dropped by the studio to say hi to her, and we had a little reminiscence about that. But yeah, that's the thing with doing gigs in LA. You never know. You never know who's going to be behind that door when you walk in. I remember this one, I won't say who it was because there's a personal thing, but this guy used to hire me all the time. His name was Larry Flax, and he owns California Pizza Kitchen with his partner. And he would hire me all the time to do magic gigs. And I remember once he said to me, "This woman I know, this lady, her husband died. And I want to do something for her, to throw a little party to cheer her up." So he's like, "I thought you could do some magic for her." Not the greatest idea in my mind. "I'm sorry, your husband's dead. Here, pick a card." But so I'm going, it's like, it's not the. So we go to a house, and this was a woman who'd been married to some very famous movie star at one point. I recognized immediately from the photos on the wall, but this was her new husband who had passed away. And it was a very strange gig. And I remember sitting in their library, and there was about 13 people sitting around the table, including people like Johnny Mathis, who was sitting on my right-hand side, who was very friendly, and other people. And we did the show, and it was great. It went as well as could be expected. Afterwards, I'm talking to Larry, and I'll never forget this. I said, "So what happened to her husband?" And he goes, "Well," he said, they were having a dinner party, and he started choking on meat, and he passed out, and basically died. And they gave him the Heimlich, and the meat came out, but it was too late. So this guy gets up from the table and starts giving her husband mouth to mouth, and brought him back. and he sat up like for a second and then dropped dead again, because the reason being is the guy that gave him mouth to mouth had the shrimp, and this guy was allergic to shrimp.
Oh my god!
You got to be kidding
So
me.
no, so like it immediately went into anaphylactic shock.
Holy
and-
shit.
Wow.
Like, so again, these are you go, okay, that's going to be a scene in something, and you write this down. But you can't, by God, when it's your time, when
Yeah.
you know, when it really is your
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
That story just, you can't help but go, what?
And you know it's true because it's
You
you
couldn't make
can't
it up.
write it up. You can't make
Yeah.
that shit up. It's got to be believable if it's fiction. So you know it's true.
Yeah.
Truth doesn't
So-
have to be believable.
So Steve, I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you
Right.
can you do a little magic for us?
Oh, I feel like Chevy Chase in the Three Amigos. It's like, I don't know if I could. I don't know if I can. I've got a little something here. I'll do a little Billy. I was going to do a little Billy O'Connor thing, just for you,
Alright.
Billy. But the problem is everything he did used somebody who was standing next to him on stage, right? But I'll see if I can move back. Can you see these?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cards? Yeah. Okay. I want to make sure that you can see the cards. Okay. All right. So this is my money trick. This is something that I like to do. I'll go. I'll see if I can. You can see the cards right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So you know what I like to do better for my money trick is just kind of just change them into money. I think that's probably the better way.
Wow.
Jesus.
Immediately when I do this, I go up 10% in hotness with the ladies. This is, I always like to say, now your girls are paying attention.
Wow.
This is great.
Wow.
Let me try a little mind reading thing here.
Okay.
Hey Billy, you can see the screen, yeah?
Yes,
All
I
right.
can see the screen.
All right, so look, we got the cards here. I'm gonna riffle the cards like this. I'll see if I can bring it up to the camera here. Just there's a slight delay. I want to make sure I get the angle right. Here we go. There. I'll move it this way a little bit.
We can
That's
see it.
perfect.
We can see it.
Okay, good. Right. Okay, so watch this. So I'll riffle through the cards like that. Billy, just think of one you can see in there. Have you got one?
Yeah.
You got one? All right. Now it's let me see if I can. It's a red one. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to take a card out. I'm going to put it on my. Ooh, it's a tricky one. This. Never read an Irishman's mind. It's a red card. It's a diamond. Yes.
Nope.
No. All right. Okay. I'm going to put a card right here. Name your card, sir.
Three of hearts.
It was the Three of Hearts. Did you see it in the pack?
Yes,
Would you be amazed if this was the Three of Hearts?
I would be.
Not only is this the Three of Hearts, but it just changed into the Two of Clubs. Wow. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Hey. Great. And then you can also change it back to the Three of Hearts.
All right.
That's
Yeah.
That's great.
Very good, man.
Yeah.
Nice job.
I think I'll show you my favorite thing here. This is I could actually make the Three of Hearts vanish from the pack. What's your favorite? You play poker at all?
Yeah, I played a bit.
All right. So what's your favorite hand? Probably like a royal flush or something like that, right?
Ace is full is my favorite hand, but I mean a royal flush would be marvelous to have, but you don't get them too often.
Watch the deck.
76,000 to
Just make
1.
the deck disappear except for a royal flush. How
Royal
about that?
flush, fantastic.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No more cards.
Wow.
Nice job.
Oh,
Huh?
That's great.
76,000 to 1.
That's
Hand.
That's
Go
great.
to you.
Derek, do you have any questions for Steve?
I have a ton, but
Okay.
okay. So first question, and since we ended with the segment with magic, how do you feel
Yes.
about the fact that there's YouTube magic and people are showing the tricks online?
I think there's always been exposure,
Okay.
just in different ways. In the old days, there was a guy in the 1700s there was this very famous French magician who was called Decron. I think it was Decron, Henri Decron. And then this guy Ponson wrote an entire book exposing every trick he did in his show. Right now, that's now a treatise on magic because it's so detailed. But at the time, Jesus Christ, his entire act was exposed. And then in the 40s and 50s, they would sell. The cigarette companies would have little cigarette cards that they would put inside the cigarette boxes that would expose magic. Scientific American used to have whole articles exposing magic tricks.
Okay.
Usually people forget about it. Like the masked magician. I remember I was asked to be the masked magician when they started doing that, and I turned it down. But it was damaging, yes, to a point, but the public usually forgets. The problem with the internet stuff is you can look it up in real time. So I have friends of mine who do tricks, and then while they're doing the tricks, someone's looking up how it's done online, and that's
wow. Yeah.
so there's a better reason to create your own magic and be original and not do what everyone else is doing, and then it's not going to be online. So in some ways, it kind of forces you to be more creative and more original in the stuff that you do. I mean, I have an online site that teaches magic. I have a site called Magic on the Go, magiconthego.com, which I started in 2017. And the idea being that it's for anyone who wants to learn magic. But I'm a real believer in knowledge is power. Like, you should immerse yourself and surround yourself with knowledge so that you can handle any situation that comes at you. If you're doing a card trick and there's someone grabs your cards and throws them away and gives you their cards, can you do the same trick? You know, it's like, these are the things that, there are things that can happen in a show that you have to be able to handle. So my site teaches, we've now almost got 1,000 videos on there. I've shot every single one of them myself. I research the magic. I find magic from the past that is in danger of being lost, these lost secrets. And then I learn it, and then I also will improve it and do my own variations on it, and then teach that as a course. And so Magic on the Go, we're almost at like 1,000 videos. And
It's
magicians
it's magiconthego.com.
magiconthego.com, yeah. And we have members all over the world. There's chat as well, so they can communicate and swap ideas. But really, I usually upload 2 or 3 different videos a month, which is a little bit of an albatross because I'm always kind of learning and filming and uploading. But in the act of doing that, because it's a creative endeavor where I'm not sitting down and saying, okay, how can I create this? What I'm actually doing is saying, okay, this is cool. And then as I'm teaching it, it's a short circuit to creativity. Usually as I'm filming the teaching section, I'll have an idea that will kind of pop into my head that improves it. And it kind of short circuits that. So then almost everything has, a few variations and improvements. But the thing, what makes that different is that you have to pay to be a member. You have to pay for the knowledge. If you get something for free, you're not going to appreciate it ever. I used to think that was a marketing thing, but it's true. I've been given stuff for free and I don't even pay attention to it. But if I'm paying money to learn, then I'm going to make sure I get my money's worth. And so now we're creating a new app that's going to go with this. It's going to go to the App Store soon. And I get messages from people all over the world saying it's helped them, that they're doing the material, that they were in a situation where this happened, and then because I discussed this other thing, they were able to apply it. And that's kind of what I'm giving back to the magic world. That's my thing.
Did you ever hear of a magician named Slidini?
Yeah. I love Slidini. He was a character.
Yeah, I've got a friend from high school who has committed his life to learning all of the tricks of Slidini. His name is Dennis Barlotta. He's quite interesting.
I don't think I know him. Slidini used to teach. I have a friend of mine who was a student of Slidini. Actually, there was this thing. I learned Slidini's technique. He was a very interesting performer because he would only perform if the circumstances were perfect. He needed his audience to be in a certain position. He needed to be in a certain place. And if it wasn't right, he wouldn't do anything. And that created this legend in a strange way. He had his own techniques. Everything he did was original. And if you go onto YouTube and look up Dick Cavett, Slidini.
I did. I watched it.
It was great. I remember watching that as a kid and being inspired by that. There's a Slidini story that I added into a script that I wrote where my friend Tony Clark who was a magician, was taking lessons from him, and Slidini would start to slip. He was in old people's home. He was starting to slip, but if you put a coin in his hands, it would bring him back. And wow. That because the creative centers are in a different place in the brain. It's like if you watch that Glenn Campbell documentary on Alzheimer's.
Yes, yeah.
But what was amazing was he couldn't remember the lyrics, but man, he could play those guitar breaks without. It was just a different part of the brain.
Same thing with Tony Bennett, who just passed away.
Same thing, yeah.
Oh, same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Derek?
That's Slidini. So I love that idea. So I took that Slidini idea and kind of put it into a script.
Okay, I want to go back to something you said. A couple of things. The next thing is you had some mansion parties. You've been to quite a few mansion parties.
Yeah.
And you don't have to disclose names and addresses, but what was the weirdest? What was the weirdest party you've ever attended?
There's a lot. I mean, some parties there's piles of caviar everywhere. Some parties there's piles of cocaine, right? So it's depending on where you go. I used to do. I remember being invited to the Playboy Mansion parties, and that was just as a guest because Hef liked Crossing Jordan, and so I got an invite. And I was on that list, and those stories just that was just. I used to sit with Gary Marshall, who used to be there. Believe it or not, Gary Marshall would show up. He'd sit at a table, and I would sit with Gary, and he would just kind of poke fun at everybody. It was hilarious. Those parties were fun. The weirdest. I mean, I did a party where one of the granddad of the bar mitzvah kid died during the ceremony.
Whoa.
And then everybody still continued the party at the mansion afterwards. And I was expected to entertain. That was weird.
Pick a card. Not you.
Yeah,
We've all lost our father at some time or another. Let's have a couple of laughs.
Yeah. You got to watch what you say, right? You can't go like, this kills him, and there's certain things you can't say now. But I remember getting hired to go down to San Diego to do a party for this guy who was a shipping magnate. And I get there, and the party was going to be on a boat that was following the yachts in the America's Cup. And I got very seasick, and and there was only like 6 or 7 people on the yacht. And so I would be down there doing a card trick, and I'd run upstairs and throw up over the side of the ship, and then run back down. And I remember there was this gorgeous couple, and basically they'd been hired by this guy to make out in front of him throughout the entire thing. And then we all went back to his party, his mansion after the yacht race, and I was invited to stay. But basically, that couple essentially were then going to have sex in all the rooms, and basically that got a bit creepy. That got a bit wild. That got a bit weird. I ended up leaving on that one. Years later, I bumped into that girl at an acting class, and you kind of go like, "What do you say?" And then I've done shows for royalty in various countries. I did a show where I can't talk about it because we signed an NDA, but I did do a show for some royalty while their building was surrounded by military vehicles, because the next day there was going to be some kind of family coup, and in a foreign country. And I remember it was very tense, and I remember feeling like I didn't want to be there. And I flew out the following right afterwards. I was like, get me to the airport, I want to go. And then the next day was this coup that went down, which explains the tension, at this particular place.
That's crazy.
Because you never know. You get hired to do a job, and you don't know what's going on.
Those are pretty weird. That's pretty good. Those are pretty good.
Pretty intense. I feel like I felt like the guy that there was this magician called Kalinag in Germany who entertained Hitler right before he invaded Poland, right? So the night before or something like that, and it's kind of like how I felt at that particular moment.
Wow.
I remember being very kind of like having like PTSD afterwards, like a little bit of like my hands were shaking when I found out what went down, just because I was in the middle of it. But great. You just don't know. You just don't know what's going to happen at an event.
Yeah.
I've done jobs for the mob. You show up and you know.
Billy's done jobs for the mob too.
And they make you disappear.
Yeah.
He joined his
that would
circus.
always be the question. Yo,
what
Mikey.
happened to Steven? What happened? He joined his circus. He's not here.
I remember
He's in Florida.
There's a trick I do where look. Hey Billy, just say stop for a second anytime you want.
Stop.
All right, look at that card. Oh,
wait a minute.
That's a special one.
Two-headed card.
Don't choose the split personality card. Just choose. We'll do it this way. Just say stop one more time. Anytime you want, you can say
stop.
All right, you can see. I can see it's the 3 of diamonds. It doesn't matter. It's. But you can see the cards right here. So the idea is you go like that. You reach into your pocket and you pull out the 3 of diamonds, right? Boom, there it is.
Nice.
Now, nice trick. You don't do that at a show with mobsters, right? You know,
right.
where you reach in your pocket. Because you don't do that. So I had a friend of mine called Simon Lovell, who's a really great magician, funny guy, and he used to do these shows in New York, and he would always walk out with a toilet roll stuffed underneath his jacket. So it was a big fold right here, you know? And he would come out and he'd be like, hey, I just want to tell you guys, I know who you are. I know the business that you're in. I came prepared. And he reaches in very slowly and comes out with the toilet roll. that was his opening line.
Pretty gutsy
Tell me
move.
about the Astounding Andy. Is that you, or who was the Astounding Andy?
Yeah, the Astounding Andy was the first guest star spot that I ever got. So the first the first speaking role I ever got was Married with Children. And which was weird because I ended up years later teaching Ron Levitt, who created the show. I ended up being his midnight magic coach. He used to like to learn card tricks to do for his girlfriend. So he would call me at 1 a.m. and go like, hey, Steve, it's Ron. You want to come over and teach me some tricks? And he'd like throw some cash in my way. But the Astounding Andy was this show, part of a show called Nightstand. And Nightstand was kind of a mock daytime talk show. And so he was which Tim Stack hosted. He was a really funny guy, funny writer. And it was, and I think I did 4 episodes. I think that was my first recurring guest star. And every time he would do a trick, he'd be like, thank you. Full of himself. We do hypnosis, and which would go wrong. That was fun. That was a fun show.
The eyes, amazing.
Yeah, I got one more. You're an interesting guy. I mean, very different from the average person. You know, you got magic tricks. You're an actor.
You're tall. Wait, how tall are you? 6'4"?
For Hollywood, yeah, I tower. You know, when you're 6'5" in Hollywood, it limits the roles because you're like, if I go to an audition, sorry to interrupt for a second, Derek, but if I go to an audition and they're like, how tall are you? I know I don't have the part, right? Because I think it was someone, when Jerry O'Connell was auditioning for Scent of a Woman, he had lunch with Pacino, and Pacino was like, how tall are you? And he was like, yeah, I don't have the part. Yeah, so Derek, go ahead. Yeah, I'm 6'5".
Yeah. So what's your routine like? You know, you got to practice. You have to practice your magic. You have to. I don't know if you practice acting or not, but you know, I don't do magic. I'm pretty much don't do anything. So what do you do on a regular basis? Like, what's your day like?
Schedule? Yeah, I'm a bit of a polymath in that there's a lot of things that I do. I end up doing a little bit of everything, and it takes forever to get stuff done. So I get a little frustrated unless I've got a deadline. Deadlines are really good for me. But magic, I don't necessarily practice anymore, but I do because I've done my 10,000 hours. But I'm always creating new stuff or building new stuff or creating a new show. So, for example, end of the year, I'm going to go on tour with the Illusionists throughout. We're going to do like a big North American tour. So me and 4 other guys, and it's 7,000 seat auditoriums. Really looking forward to that. That's going to be a blast. So I'm working on the material for that. But I also write. So I have a comic book that I'm writing. I have a couple of pilot scripts. I've sold series before. So, and then when an acting audition comes in, I'll focus on that. It's really, every day is different.
So just constantly creating things.
I'm just constantly being creative or trying to find ways to, I've got a couple of kids now, so I want to make sure that the income. In the old days when I was single, or it didn't matter if I didn't work for 2 or 3 months, you go get by it. But when you got kids, okay, I got to bring the money in. Now that we're on this strike, I just know nothing's going to come in for a while. So I've been focusing mainly on live shows, doing my one-man show, doing a bunch of stuff. I'm going to be in October, I think it is. I'm going to be at the Stanley Hotel in Colorado, where they shot The Shining. They have a beautiful little theater there. So I'll do my show there. A couple of shows here in Toronto. Then we start the tour because I know that we're not going to get this contract resolved anytime soon. So lucky for me, I have these other things that keep me interested. But it's always I'm all over the place. It's a bit ADD.
I noticed, Steve, that you did a lot of video game voices too. Is that lucrative? Is that? I mean, I don't want to know the numbers, but is it lucrative? Is something that you got to?
No, it's a video game. So there is a union contract for that, but it's a scale contract, and they really don't want to pay you more than scale. So you make a little bit of money. I mean, it depends on the game, but you'll do like, if it's just voices, then you will do a 4-hour session. You'll get like a stack of sheets of paper about this thick, A4. Each paper has like 10 lines of dialogue on it. You get to do three versions, and you move on to the next line. And usually the director or the writer is in your ear. And that can add up. You can make maybe 10, 15, 20 grand if you're lucky, but there's no residuals on that. And now we're finding that there's this AI clause which they've snuck in, which they're able to, depending on which union you are, they're able to take your motion capture and use it for other projects. So we're going to see even less work coming in. The way to make money now off of the video games is, if you do a video game and it's even remotely successful, is you can do the autograph. They can do like Comic-Cons, and you can make cash that way. And they kind of know that now, so that's part of their negotiation. Is come on, you're gonna make some cash.
Making cash is always good, isn't it?
And appearances, make appearances, make some cash, sign some papers. Yeah.
Well, Steve, thanks so much for being a guest.
Man. Terrific. Thanks for coming on.
For putting up with Billy.
Thanks for having me.
Putting up with Billy for an hour or so. It was a great day for us.
I should have asked you a bunch of questions about being a Bronx bookie.
Yeah, Bronx bookie, an alcoholic, a drug addict.
I went down. I made a few.
Sounds like show business all over again.
Just a few wrong turns. That's all I did.
But we got him on a straight and narrow now.
I got a straight and narrow. Frank has got me on a tight leash.
Yeah. Great.
Well, he's a good producer. He'll make sure that's the way it's going to be.
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you for
Thanks
appearing
for coming
on a Mick and a mic. Be
well,
my
pleasure.
friend.
Great chatting to you, chaps.
To you, man.
Great.
Take care,
Thanks.
brother.
Pleasure.
Stay well.
Okay. Bye-bye. Take care.
Good guy, huh?
Terrific guy. And he hangs out with Gary Marshall when he's hanging at the party. He's a Bronx guy, Gary Marshall.
Yep. Gary Marshall,
Concourse.
Created Laverne and Shirley.
Yeah, for the Concourse. Another guy. Terrific guy. The voices are amazing. And again, back to what you talk about, if these lips could talk, stay versatile. Stay in the ball game. Stay in the ball game. Show up on time, hit your mark, and be versatile.
You never know when you're going to go to Ron Howard's house to do magic trick.
Many times, it's not about how many people see you, if the right person sees you.
It is exactly.
That's the deal, right?
Well, the right person has saw us today. Billy
They've
O'Connor,
also, the millions of people out there that have seen us today.
It's, maybe a million.
Just a million?
Just a million. Derek,
my brother, you've done it again.
Derek, ride us into the sunset.
Do a British accent. Get us out.
Do
we have the rights to the Bonanza theme song?
We can sing it, baby.
Okay.
Next week's guest, 4-time Olympic gold medal winner, broadcaster, and motivational speaker, John Neighbor.